I'm Nicola Courtwright. I teach the history of art from early modern Europe from about 1400 to 1800, but I also teach the first year seminar with Rick Lopez. He and I have developed this course called Encounters with Nature a few years ago that we're still working on and developing and actually loving. We don't want this just to be an intellectual experience. We actually want them to be able to observe and experience all the different parts of nature that are in their surroundings and then outside. So when we go on these hikes, they really are having a sense of their surroundings that they could never do from just sitting in the classroom. And then they draw, and so they actually have to make their own picture of what they think nature looks like, and then we analyze it, and they talk about what their idea about nature was, but perhaps that doesn't correspond to the reality. And it certainly doesn't correspond to the historical origins of what this land looked like. So they begin to realize when hiking across it how much everything has been altered. So they became very conscious of, in a physical sense and in an analytical sense, of their own environment here that they'll be in for 4 years.
Where I come from, it's not so different from this kind of setting in that it's hilly, it's got a lot of trees and nature, but we don't control nature as much back home. People here kind of take a lot of thought into creating boundaries and manipulating the nature around. And this walk in particular has been kind of eye-opening because although we had discussed most of the topics that we're talking about today, we hadn't really considered the gaps between man and nature and how the walls that we are creating are kind of separating us from the wild side of nature.
Frost put something processional in here. We keep the wall between us. We set the wall between us. So it's not that we have built the wall or we built the wall again, right? There's something about the process here that gets exactly what you're talking about, but it's much more about the process. They're walking side by side. They're walking right next to each other. They're talking to each other. But every step they take, they're picking up those stones and putting them back in their place. They know they're going to fall again. As soon as they turn their back, as soon as nature changes, as soon as something happens, just the passage of time, they know those boulders are going to fall again and they're going to remain neighbors and they're going to keep walking next to each other. Yet they go through this over and over.
It's a mix of so many interesting topics and topics that you wouldn't necessarily associate with one another. So you have sort of environmentalism, but you also have art history and American history and literature, and it's this nice blend that cuts across different categories. Now, I've taken in a ton of new information that I had just never known before, and I was, surprised by that because I considered myself pretty knowledgeable.
So to draw isn't just to capture what something looks like, but it's to capture something that you want to express, that you're seeing in that. You guys know this trick? Hold out your hands in front of you, turn around and face the pond. So I want you to think about drawing, first of all, is not just capturing in a blank way what is before you.
It's not just a replica of something, right? That's really important.
It's not just a replica.
I actually think we have artists in this class. Yeah. The whole class is looking really great.
I love the way you convey depth without much shading. That's hard.
Thank you.
I just wanted to show how it was kind of like the tree was really complex, had a lot of branches in comparison to the other ones that really weren't. They were like a lot smaller.
I think they will never ever be able to look at a space, a place, or a picture of something again in the same way. I think they're always going to be wide awake to what it says about the space or the place or the picture of something. That they're always going to be analytically awake. And I think they're also going to be much more sensitive to what's around them, to pay attention to what's going on around them physically, in their environments, even in cities. I think it's going to I'm hoping it'll make a big difference.